One offshoot of the popularity of Peter Jackson's trilogies in India was the publication of the Marathi language translations of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings by Meena Kinikar and Mukta Karnik, respectively. In today's presentation, I intend to focus on certain aspects of Karnik's three-volume Marathi trilogy titled Swami Mudrikancha, Mudrikeche Sathidar, Te Don Manore, and Rajache Punaragamana, all of which were published in 2015. Part 1. The Reluctant Translator. It can be discerned from her published interviews, but more so from the translation itself, that the translator does not betray any in depth familiarity with the stories included in the Silmarillion or any of Tolkien's other fictional and scholarly writings. Indeed, she does not betray any interest in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings beyond the translation exercise itself. In her translator's note to Swami Mudrikancha, Karnik states that she undertook the task of translating Tolkien's work only upon her daughter's insistence, who in turn is a Tolkien fan. Karnik, on the other hand, clarifies that her interest is restricted to the work's narrative style, or Kathan Shaili, its descriptions of nature, and its adventure story, or Sahas Katha. She makes no bones about her aversion towards its technology opposed worldview or Tantradnyan Virod. She explicitly states her disinterest in any scholarly engagement with Tolkien's work and in conveying any of its philosophical underpinnings or Tattvadnyan. Indeed, she does not believe that The Lord of the Rings might have any such philosophical underpinning or theme. This misplaced belief finds expression in this revealing mistranslation that reduces Celeborn's of the transmission of truth, fact, or even wisdom through folklore into one that is solely concerned with their capacity to safeguard old words and their meanings from the ravages of time. Part 2. A Wanting Translation. In a Marathi blog post titled Anuvad Kartana or While Translating, written for promoting the translated volumes in 2016, she confesses that she was bored with and wearied by the translation of the poems that disclose the historical dimension of Tolkien's fictional world. However, she does admit her own dissatisfaction with her translated versions. This lack of interest is best discerned in the many mistranslations dealing with specific aspects that touch upon the history of Middle Earth and its peoples. I will restrict myself to discussing only two types of examples from the many available in the text. Of familial relationships among the different characters. For example, Sam's father Hamfast Gamgee starts out as his grandfather in the translation, only to become his father later on in the work. He, along with a few older hobbits like Bilbo, is also frequently addressed as Buddha, a word derisively used for an old man, particularly in the earlier parts of the work, instead of the word Mahatara, which is also colloquially used for one's father. Sam does use this word for his father, albeit only in the later parts of the translation. Ham Gamgee is also often described as being a Budbudya, whereas the sense or trait remains unstated in Tolkien's text. Perhaps this added trait, as well as the shifting nature of Sam's relationship with him, arises because of the translator's uncertain understanding of the word gaffer. The other example involves the much valued status of kingship in Tolkien's work. The significance of Aragorn's claim to the kingship of both Gondor and Arnor gets severely undermined by the translation's indiscriminate use of the words Raja and Maharaj. For instance, Eomer addresses Aragorn when he is still in pursuit of Pippin and Merry and the orcs who captured them. Indeed, in this very chapter, Eomer himself is addressed as Maharaj. while Theoden is called a mere Raja. Similarly, Beren is called a king's son or prince in Aragon's tale of Tinuviel. Furthermore, the translation also excludes some of the individual words, phrases, sentences, footnotes, and passages present in Tolkien's main narrative text. In fact, all three volumes contain at least one such missing passage. As far as the appendices are concerned, Appendix A indulges in an unauthorized account, overlooking the existence of explanatory footnotes. Appendix B is reduced to very brief summaries of books with the detailed chronological accounts present in the English text. Appendices C to F are not given in any way. The translator requests interested readers to refer to the family trees of the principal characters found in this work were restricting myself to just one example. The word slain here takes on the added gory imagery evoked by the word kantasnana, a way of killing that leads to the body being bathed by the blood flowing from the slit throat. Part 3. A translation of many words. In her published interviews and translator's note to Swami Mudrikancha, Karnik also emphasizes that her primary concern while translating was to live up to the challenge of what she understands as the grandeur or vaibhav, elegance or lalitya, beauty or saundarya, and power or takat of Tolkien's language use in The Lord of the Rings. She proclaims a good deal of pride in the Marathi language and its vocabulary range, which is enriched by Sanskrit, Maharashtri, Prakrit, Persian, Hindi, and English, among other languages, as well as in her own mastery over the language. However, one of the ways of displaying this mastery results in the translation deploying several synonyms for signifying a single referent. This referent is rendered by Tolkien, on the other hand, in one or two more commonly and equivalents, which contemporary readers would find more easier to follow and understand. Such a display of vocabulary variety in engaging younger, particularly teenage readers, because of the translation's resulting complexity. Tolkien's work, regardless of their age group, with its oft changing signifiers. The translation often employs compound word formations of an archaic bent, relying on either Sanskrit loanwords or Sanskritized Marathi. These are best seen in unfortunately, avoidable errors end up being introduced in the process. For example, the waning moon in Tolkien becomes Shuklendu in the translation, while Aditi in the Hindu pantheon bolsters the continued reference to the sun as he, or Aryan in the Hindu pantheon, and his use of the pronoun she to refer to the sun. Similarly, avoidable errors can be found in the translation of for both R and middle morning, and Ushakal for morning in Tolkien. These could have been easily avoided by keeping to words like tas and pahat, as well as sakar, which means morning. These words are not just more commonly used in general, but are also often used synonymously in the translation itself. On the other hand, the translation of the units of measuring length and depth are well thought out. For example, it substitutes equivalent measuring units for the length of a river like var and purush for yards, ells, and fathoms, and provides exact or approximate conversions as the case may be. And what Tolkien calls, and I quote, the strangeness of Hobbit's speech. Such use, however, is not consistent throughout the text. Sam always addresses only Frodo in the equivalent differential form, and so does the Herbmaster of Gondor when speaking to Aragorn. The stylistic devices displayed by the translation
Okay, can I? The unfortunate thing is that I cannot see the chat at all, so I don't know what you're saying at all. Unfortunately, you've been suggesting support. Thank you very much, but unfortunately, I can't see it. Sonali, are you there at all?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we could.
And can you see my screen?
Possible, we can indeed.
So can I start again from here?
and provides exact or approximate conversions as the case may be. Another interesting feature of the translation is the use of the familiar form of the second person pronoun, thereby successfully conveying to a great extent what Tolkien calls, and I quote, the strangeness of Hobbit speech. Such use, however, is not consistent throughout the text. For example, Sam always addresses only Frodo in the equivalent differential form, and so does the Herbmaster of Gondor when speaking to Aragorn. The stylistic devices displayed by the translation also allude to the speech habits successfully conveying to a great extent what Tolkien calls, and I quote, the strangeness of Hobbit speech. Such use, however, is not consistent throughout the text. For example, Sam always addresses only Frodo in the equivalent differential form, and so does the Herbmaster of Gondor when speaking to Aragorn. The stylistic devices displayed by the translation also allude to the speech habits of, I quote, hobbits such as Frodo and other persons such as Gandalf and Aragorn, who, I quote again, do not always use the same style. The underlined verse here, Harita Trunancha Makhamalivar, in the translation of Tom Bombadil's poem, alludes not only to Balkavi's well-known poem Fulurani, written in 1911, and the tradition of Marathi nature poetry, but also to Tolkien's verbatim reproduction of the line, "The cow jumped over the moon," and his own engagement with the tradition of the man in the moon. The translated ring verse, which I will read out now, places greater emphasis on its sound patterns, which is a characteristic feature of the Adbhut Kadambari or the Marathi fantastic novel. नभाखालच्या elfनरूपांच्या तीन मुद्रिका पाषाणाच्या भव्य दालनी रौफनुपांच्या सात मुद्रिका मृत्युभयाकुल मर्त्य मानवांसाठी घडल्या नऊ मुद्रिका आणि एकच केवळ एकच कृष्ण शक्तीच्या स्वामीकरिता जो असेल आरूढ अघोर काळ्या सिंहासनावर तमसांकित काळ्या मॉरडॉरच्या मरणभूमीवर ही एक मुद्रिका अंकुश जैसा सर्वांवरचा ही एक मुद्रिका घेईल शोध सर्वांचा ही एक मुद्रिका घेईल वेध सर्वांचा ही एकच घालील सकलांना विडखा तमपाशांचा तमसांकित काळ्या मॉरडॉरच्या मरणभूमीवर. This emphasis on alliteration, along with the translator's greater reliance on Sanskritized vocabulary as mentioned earlier, further strengthens its thematic and stylistic kinship with the Marathi fantastic novel compared to works of mythological fiction like V.S. Khandekar's 1959 novel Yayati. Khandekar's feted classic work also features Sanskritized Marathi, which is in keeping with its mythological subject, though it does not completely eschew words of Perso-Arabic lineage. However, it displays a consistency of style and vocabulary, comparatively shorter sentences, and an almost conversational, confessional style of narration. Nature descriptions abound in this work as well, but they function as windows into the psychological states and worldviews of the three narrators, marking it also as a psychological novel. Unlike Tolkien, this work was intended by its author to be an allegorical social critique of the Indian man and society during the early 1950s in the aftermath of both World War II and the Indian independence movement. Part 4: Curious and Curiouser Cultural Evocations. The translation's vocabulary choices in particular have led to the possibility of some very curious, and at times jarring, evocative resonances. I will restrict myself to enumerating only a select few. The first of these concerns the translation of the words dark and black as Krishna in connection with Sauron and Mordor. While Krishna is indeed a Sanskrit loanword for dark as well as black, it is more commonly known as the name of a popular deity in the Hindu pantheon, and as such has the added connotation of beautiful or attractive. Thus its use has a jarring effect for those readers who harbor positive connotations with this word as such, or are this deity's religious adherents. This jarring effect is best experienced in the translation of the black or dark land as Krishna Bhumi, the shadow as Krishna Chaya, the black gate as Krishna Dwar, and the dark lord as Krishna Swami, Krishna Bhumi sa Swami, and Krishna Shaktin sa Swami. The latter, which translates as the Lord of Dark Powers, comes close to evoking more esoteric religious worldviews and even superstitious beliefs. The Sanskrit loanword Dwar, in association with Krishna, also evokes the Hindu deity's mythological capital of Dwarka, which remains a famous place of pilgrimage for many of his religious adherents even today. However, any sustained misunderstanding of the intended referent is averted by the translation's equally frequent use of the word kara, a more commonly used synonym for dark or black. Examples include Kari Chaya and Kari Savli for the shadow, Kari Bhumi and Kara Desh for the black land and country respectively, Kara Manora for the dark tar, Kara Dwar and Kara Dar for the black gate, Kara Panja for the black hand, Kara Senapati for the black captain, Kare Swar for the black riders, and Kara Shwas for the black breath. This word, however, is used very rarely for the Dark Lord himself. For example, only one instance each can be found of Kara Swami for the Dark Master, Kara for Golem's the Black One, and Kara Duratma in place of the Dark Lord. Only rarely is he referred to as Dushta, a Sanskrit loanword meaning cruel or hateful, thereby coming close to connoting the notion of evil. The word Krishna, on the other hand, is not used even once to translate the black riders. In addition to the words Dwar and Dar, the black gate is also referred to using the word Darwaza. Besides being used for doors or smaller structures like houses, temples, and so on, the word Darwaza is additionally and almost exclusively used to refer to the fortified main gateways of the at least 200 to 300 surviving historical forts in the state of Maharashtra. Some of these were built during the time of the Maratha kingdom under its founder Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. As such, they remain inseparably associated with him in our socio-cultural political imagination, in which he functions almost as an Aragon equivalent. The evocative associations become more pronounced in the translated descriptions of Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith through the use of words like Killa, Bale Killa, Buruz, and Tatabandi, all of which belong to the nomenclature of these historical floats. The Maratha kingdom and its continuing constitutive influence on the present-day socio-political culture of Maharashtra is also evoked through the word "tutari", which is used to translate the word "trumpet" in a line from Gimli's Song of Durin. This metal wind instrument, playing out the distinctive heraldic sound of the Maratha kingdom, is often heard today in front of the gates of such fortresses on anniversary and festival days and so on. This instrument was also used earlier as a signal of war and was made of animal horns. However, the translation refrains from using the word tutari in such contexts and instead evokes these associations through the use of words like shinga and ranashinga, besides retaining the English word trumpet in at least one instance. The translation also uses the words bheri and ranabheri and dundubi and ranadundubi for translating the word trumpet, though these are more commonly known as percussion rather than wind instruments. The word drum itself is translated as dhol and nagara. The word cloak is similarly translated using five different words, none of which, however, serves as a fitting equivalent for it. These words evoke objects ranging from the more familiar to what might prove to be more jarring to some. These are coat, shawl, angarkha, jaga, and burqa. The word burqa is frequently used for describing cloaked characters, from the hobbits, Aragorn, and Gandalf to the Nazgul, when they are shrouded in darkness or are hooded. The word shawl is used when the context implies the coldness of the surrounding weather. The word angarkha, on the other hand, is additionally used to translate the word shirt as well as coat. Of all the different mentioned and unmentioned examples, the word or notion most difficult to translate in my view has been precious. When it comes to Golem's frequent use of this word, the translation relies on variations of a common word of endearment for children and loved ones, such as Sonia, Sonuli, Sonule, and Sonu. However, when it comes to characters like Isildur and Frodo, the translation exclusively uses the word Anmol, which means priceless or very valuable. Golem in some places does take vicos to compound forms like Anmol Sonali. Unfortunately, the endearment Sonia and its variations do not come close to capturing the trait of obsession and indicating the corrupting influence of the ring that accompanies the word precious in Tolkien's work. The reliance on a different word, that is Anmol, in the case of Frodo and Isildur, breaks any attempt at pattern formation, thereby preventing the reader from recognizing this telltale indicator of the evil influence and possession of the ring. Any such association gets further undermined when the endearment Sonia is also used by Gandalf, Pippin, and Frodo for Gimli and Pippin, Merry and Sam respectively. To conclude, it would not be far-fetched to claim that the translation would have fared much better had the translator acknowledged the existence of and taken the work's philosophical underpinnings and themes, particularly that of the problem of evil, a bit more seriously. Thank you for your patience.